The wounded ground the battle had ended hours ago, but smoke still floated in the air, and the sky above the broken moon stayed red like it was bleeding too. Everything looked quiet now, but that silence was heavy and full of loss. Wrecked machines were scattered across the surface like broken toys of a forgotten war. Between the metal scraps and cracked stones lay a human soldier. His name was Tom. His armor was torn and one of his arms hung limp beside him. His face was covered with dirt and dried blood, and his legs would not move anymore. Tom had tried calling for help many times, but the signal from his device had already died during the last blast. The rest of his unit had no choice but to retreat and leave the wounded behind. He understood that. It was part of war. Still, he had not expected the deep feeling of being left alone in such a way. His eyes stayed open, but the light in them had started to fade. He thought maybe this was it. Maybe this cold, hard place would be where it all ended. Time passed like a dream half awake. He could not tell how long he lay there before he noticed something new. There were footsteps nearby. They were not loud, but each one shook the ground just enough for him to feel. He blinked slowly and turned his head. At first he saw only shadows moving through the smoke. Then he saw a shape. It was tall, much taller than any human. The figure came closer until the smoke cleared a little dot. It was a woman, but not a human one. She stood at least 9 feet tall, with skin the color of storm clouds and long limbs that moved with calm strength. Her eyes were large and glowing faint blue. Her hair looked like silver wires hanging down her back. She wore strange armor made of living vines and stones that pulsed like they had a heartbeat. Tom tried to raise his weapon, but his body would not listen. He only watched as she stepped closer and looked down at him. She did not speak. She did not attack. She crouched beside him in a slow, careful motion, like someone kneeling beside a broken bird. Her hand reached out and Tom felt panic for a moment. He had seen what alien warriors could do in combat, but this hand did not bring pain. Instead, it brushed dust from his face with surprising softness. She studied his wounds, and her gaze changed. Something deep passed through her expression. It was not anger. It was not hate. It was a kind of sadness mixed with quiet care. Without warning, she placed both hands under his body and lifted him like he weighed nothing. Her arms were strong, but the way she held him was gentle. Tom tried to speak, but only coughed. His voice was gone. He expected to be carried to a prison or dropped in some holding cage, but the direction she walked was away from the battlefield and away from the wreckage. Her feet made almost no sound. She moved like someone used to walking through dangerous places, but not afraid of them. The sky above stayed red and the air stayed still, but something had changed. Tom felt it. He did not know where she was taking him or why she had chosen to save him instead of leaving him like the others had. But one thing was clear. He was no longer alone, and for the first time since the war began, someone had touched him without violence. The great alien woman carried him through the smoke and dust, like a mother carries a sleeping child away from fire. Not a word was spoken, but something in that silence said more than voices ever could. And somewhere deep inside the pain and fear, Tom felt a strange warmth he had not felt in years. Maybe hope was not lost after all. The quiet shelter, the sky above. The broken moon slowly shifted from red to gray, but the land remained still like a place forgotten by time. Inside a cave hidden between tall stones and ash-covered hills, the wounded soldier opened his eyes again. His body ached in places he could not count, and his head felt heavy, like it had been filled with smoke. For a moment he thought he had passed into another world, but the warmth beside him told him he was still alive. Tom lay on a soft bed made of strange, glowing leaves that hummed with gentle energy. A smooth light filled the space, not from fire or bulb, but from crystals that grew along the walls like living stars. He turned his head slowly and saw her sitting nearby. The tall alien woman who had rescued him sat with her back against the stone wall. She held a bowl of liquid in her hand and stirred it with a tool that looked half plant and half machine. She saw him move and walked over with slow steps. Her face was calm like a quiet river. No words passed between them, but her eyes spoke something that felt like comfort. She helped him sit up with care. Her hands were large but moved with a kind of kindness that reached deeper than language. She held the bowl to his lips. The taste was strange but not bad. It was warm and smooth, and after a few sips the pain in his chest started to ease. He tried to ask her name, but the sounds caught in his throat. He raised his hand and pointed to her, then to himself, then tapped his chest twice. She understood. She touched her own chest once and made a sound. It was not a name he could pronounce, but he repeated it softly. She smiled and nodded. She gave him a name for her people, but he could not remember it. It did not matter much. What mattered was that she stayed near him day and night. She cleaned his wounds with her strange tools and fed him carefully. Each movement she made was thoughtful and slow, like she did not want to bring even a second of harm. Tom watched her and wondered why. Why would someone so different from him care in a way no one else ever had? Back in his life before the war, people were cold. In the barracks, in the field, in the city, before it all began, no one had ever taken time to show him this kind of kindness. Not even family. Each time she touched his shoulder to check his wound or helped him eat, he felt something new. A strange warmth filled the empty space in his heart, where hope had died long ago. One night while he rested against the cave wall and watched her prepare food, he noticed her singing. The sound was low and deep and full of feeling. He did not understand the words, but the melody was slow and peaceful. It reminded him of a lullaby someone might sing to a child. Her voice echoed in the cave like wind through trees. Tom closed his eyes and listened. He felt a tear roll down his cheek, but did not wipe it away. He did not know why it came. Maybe it was the way she looked at him, not as a soldier, not as an enemy, not as a weapon, but as a person. Over the next days, she began showing him how to use simple tools from her world. She placed a flat round device in his hand and guided his fingers over the symbols. Lights blinked and patterns shifted. She smiled each time he got it right. He felt like a child again, learning from someone patient and kind. They made small progress in communication. She drew shapes in the dirt and pointed to objects. He copied her and added symbols from his own language. They both laughed once when they misunderstood each other and made a mess of water. Laughter had been missing from his life. Now it echoed through the cave like a gift. Tom began to help her with little tasks. Holding tools, handing her leaves, collecting small stones that pulsed with energy. He still limped and his strength was weak, but she never rushed him. In her presence, he felt something return. Not just his body, but his will. His belief that maybe there was still good in this universe. The cave was not home, but it became a place of peace. A space where two beings from different worlds shared silent moments and unspoken understanding. And in the middle of that broken moon beneath the cave ceiling, lined with glowing crystal stars, one human and one alien began to rebuild something that war had almost destroyed. They began to rebuild trust, bonds in silence. The days moved like quiet waves now. The cave had become a small world of its own, where time did not follow the rules of war or duty. Tom could stand without help now, though his legs still shook at times. His arm was healing slowly under strange plant-like wraps that glowed with every breath. Each morning he would wake to the scent of herbs and the soft light from crystal walls, and each night he would fall asleep to the hum of Mira's voice, as she sang in that deep language he still could not understand, Mira, was always near, like a shadow that brought warmth, not fear. She watched him during his short walks, guided him when he slipped, and corrected him when he forgot the signs she had taught. Their silent language had grown stronger. With hands and eyes and drawings in the dirt, they now spoke about things beyond food and wounds. They spoke about stars, weapons, memories, and feelings. Tom drew pictures of his home once. A small house near a river and a dog with floppy ears. Mira listened, then nodded and placed a smooth, flat stone over the drawing like she wanted to keep it safe. She responded by drawing shapes that show her own world: wide trees and floating lakes and animals with wings shaped like hands. They could not share words, but they shared something deeper. Sometimes Mira would leave the cave for short trips, and Tom would wait near the entrance, watching the dark sky and thinking about what had happened to his squad, his unit, and the entire battle. It had been madness, a storm of fire and steel, and now here he was rescued, not by humans, not by medics, not by drones, but by a towering alien who treated him like something valuable. One night after Mira returned with a bundle of silver-rooted plants, she found Tom staring at the cave wall, his mind far away. She sat beside him and touched his arm gently. He looked at her, then looked away. His eyes held pain, not from his injuries, but from something deeper. He tapped his fingers slowly on the ground to form a sentence using their shared signals. He asked why she helped him. Why him? Why now? Mira paused. Then she reached for the dirt and drew a shape. It looked like a young creature curled up and injured. Beside it, she drew a taller figure lifting the smaller one. Then she pointed to herself, then to him, then back to the drawing. Tom stared at the image for a long time. He understood too. Mira, this was not war. This was life. A life was hurt, so she saved it. No reason beyond that. No mission. No reward. Just care. The next morning, Tom helped her prepare a mixture of crushed roots and heated stones. He learned how to stir it with a smooth bone stick and how to test the scent to know it was ready. Mira watched him with eyes that glowed a little brighter than usual. Later that day, they walked together beyond the cave for the first time. Not far, just to a small stream that flowed between broken rocks. The water shimmered with strange colors, but was safe. Mira showed him how to collect energy stones that floated in the water like leaves. Tom laughed when one of the stones jumped from his grip and splashed him. Mira laughed too, a low, rich sound that shook the air gently. They sat near the water and shared dried fruit Mira had brought. There was peace in that moment, pure and full, like a forgotten dream. But Tom also felt something. Elsie, a fear, a voice in his mind that whispered, this cannot last. He knew the war was not over. He knew his people were out there still searching, still fighting. He also knew they would not understand what he had found here, not just healing, not just safety, but something more: respect, connection, kindness. He looked at Mira as she tossed another fruit to a small bird-like creature nearby. She smiled at the animal and the creature chirped in reply. Tom realized then that what she gave him was something he had never received in all his years in uniform, or in training, or even before the war. She gave him care without condition, and in that simple act she taught him something he had never truly known: what it meant to be seen, not as a tool, or a fighter, or a number, but as a being who mattered, a human. He breathed in the quiet wind and let it fill his lungs. For now they had this moment. That was enough. The sky burns again. Days of peace did not last forever. The silence that once wrapped around their cave like a warm blanket now began to feel thin. Strange sounds returned to the skies above. Tom stood near the cave mouth one morning and looked at the horizon. There were trails of smoke rising in the distance. The sky no longer held calm colors. It had begun to turn orange with faint hints of fire and ash. He walked back inside and found Mira already awake. She was standing by a wall where her tools were laid out. Her hands moved faster than usual. Her eyes did not glow gently anymore. They held a sharpness now. She knew what was coming even before Tom could say anything. She gave him a look that held more meaning than words. A message passed between them without sound. Danger was near. Tom helped her gather supplies. They packed herbs, crystals, small stones that held energy, and a few bone tools wrapped in plant fibers. Mira moved with purpose and grace, but her shoulders looked heavier. She kept glancing toward the cave entrance like she expected shadows to appear at any moment. Later that day, they climbed a short ridge behind the cave to reach a stone platform. There Mira placed a small round device shaped like a folded flower. She pressed her fingers against its center, and it opened with a soft hum. A light rose into the sky like a signal. Tom watched in silence. He knew it was a sensor not for help but for warning. It scanned the sky and ground and searched for movement. They did not wait long before nightfall. The sensor pulsed twice. Mira looked up and so did Tom. Shapes were moving through the far edge of the valley. Not animals, not her people. These were human drones, small, fast, and armed. They flew low, scanning the ground and air. Tom felt his chest tighten. He had once trusted those machines. They were part of his side, his mission, his people. But now he feared what they might do if they found Mira. She was not wearing human tags. She was not listed in any friendly database. To them she was still an enemy. They returned to the cave. Mira handed him a small weapon shaped like a curve of bone with glowing veins. He held it in silence. She also gave him a piece of her armor to wear on his shoulder. It wrapped around him like a living shield. Then the drones arrived. They came at sunset when the shadows were long. Mira stepped outside with Tom close behind. The first drone fired without warning. A sharp blast cut through the air and hit a stone near them. Mira raised her hand and formed a barrier using her armor. The shield pulsed and held but cracked slightly. Tom raised his borrowed weapon and fired. The bolt struck the drone and it fell spinning into the dust. Another came from behind. Mira turned fast and threw a glowing stone that exploded in the air. The drone burst into pieces. Then a third drone fired again and hit her shoulder. She did not fall, but Tom saw the pain in her eyes. Her arm dropped slightly. Blood or something like it flowed down her side. She stepped back as two more drones circled above. Tom ran forward without thinking. He grabbed a fallen energy stone and threw it with all his strength. The stone missed the drone but hit the scanner eye. The drone lost balance and crashed. Mira looked at him with surprise. Then she smiled weakly and nodded. They fought side by side until the last drone flew away trailing smoke. The ground was silent again, but not the same kind of silence. This one felt thin and heavy. Mira sat against a rock, breathing slowly. Her wound looked deep. Tom knelt beside her and used the herbs she had taught him about. His hands shook, but he remembered her steps. Press the root, twist the vine, apply the heat. He followed her way. She watched him with eyes half closed but full of trust. When the bleeding slowed, she touched his face gently and tapped the stone she had once placed over his drawing. He understood what it meant now. It was her way of keeping things that mattered safe. He stood and looked up at the stars. He reached for a broken piece of his old unit and reactivated the distress signal. He no longer wanted rescue. He wanted to send a message. His voice was weak, but it carried through the static. He spoke not of enemies, not of orders, but of care. He told whoever would hear that war had blinded them and that there were those on the other side who did not want destruction, who could heal, who could care. He ended the message with words that came from the heart. She saved me when my own kind left me behind. Now I will protect her. The signal rose into the sky, and Tom stayed beside Mira, waiting for whatever would come next. More than human. Stars above the broken moon looked brighter the next morning, but the world below was still full of questions. The signal Tom sent had reached deep space, and someone had heard it. A human patrol ship landed near the valley just before sunrise. Its wings stretched wide like a silent hawk coming to check what had been lost. Tom stood outside the cave waiting for them. Mira sat behind him inside the shadow of the stone wall, her arms still wrapped in glowing vine. She did not hide, but she did not move forward either. She knew what this moment meant. 3 soldiers in heavy suits stepped out from the ship. Their helmets reflected the morning light. One of them held a scanner, and another had a weapon ready, though not raised. The third stepped forward and looked at Tom. "You are Tom Clay?" they asked. Tom nodded slowly. "Yes, I am." The soldier looked around, then pointed toward the cave. "We received your signal." The message was strange. "You claim to have been saved by a native. Is that true?" Tom looked back toward Mira. Her tall form was still and quiet, but her eyes watched with steady calm. "Yes," he said again. "She saved me when no one else did." There was silence. The soldier glanced at the others, then lowered the scanner. "You understand that her species is still listed under hostile contacts?" Tom stepped forward. "Then change the list." The soldiers did not reply at once. They looked at the cave, then at the land, then at the broken drone still lying in pieces. After a moment, the one with the scanner walked toward Mira slowly. He stopped a few steps away and placed the scanner on the ground as a sign of peace. Mira stepped forward. She did not speak, but she did not show fear. She looked at the man with calm eyes and nodded once. The man nodded back. That moment changed everything. In the days that followed, a small camp was built near the valley, not for war, but for talks. Scientists and peace workers arrived. Tom stayed by Mira's side, helping explain what he had seen, what he had learned, what he had felt. He told them about the healing cave, the silent language, the bond that grew between 2 lives, shaped by battle, but softened by care. He was no longer just a soldier. He had become something else. A voice that connected one world to another. Mira's wound healed in time. She began to walk again without pain. The other members of her kind began to arrive one by one, curious and careful. They did not trust quickly, but they listened. Months passed. The broken moon became a meeting place. Not perfect, not without tension, but better than before. The war stopped, not fully, but enough to breathe again. Tom never returned to the army. He chose to stay with Mira and her people. He learned more of their ways and helped teach them human language while still using the old signs they had created together. One day, Mira gave him a gift. A small stone wrapped in vine that pulsed softly in his hand. It was shaped like the first one she had placed over his drawing in the cave. He asked her what it meant. She touched his chest with her hand, then tapped her own heart. Then she whispered something. It was his name in her voice, the first word she ever said in human tongue. Tom held the stone close. He did not speak. He only smiled. In time, a new base rose between the hills. A shared station where human and alien worked side by side. Tom stood on the highest point and watched ships land with peacekeepers, researchers, and people who just wanted to build instead of destroy. And every evening, as the stars returned, he sat beside Mira under the open sky. They did not always need words. Their bond had been born in silence and shaped by acts, not names. It had grown stronger than fear, deeper than blood. It had changed one man, it had changed one giant woman. And through them, it had changed 2 worlds, not through orders, not through weapons, not through commands, but through care, simple care. The kind humanity could not give, but she did, and he would never forget. The end.